Welcome to Hey, It's Carly Rae's Book Club. This is Book Hour where authors talk their latest novels, reveal their writing process, and chat all things books. I'm your host, Carly Rae, here with television journalist and author Mary Calvi. Welcome, Mary. I'm so excited to have you.
Carly Rae, it's so good to talk to you today. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, where are you joining us from?
So I'm in New York, just outside of New York City in a city called Yonkers, and this is my home. Welcome.
Well, let's talk your latest novel, If a Poem Could Live and Breathe. Tell readers who haven't heard of it what's it about.
It's a love story from the Gilded Age based on love letters that I was able to see and transcribe from Teddy Roosevelt to his first love, Alice, and from Alice to Teddy. And it was quite an experience, honestly, Carly Rae, just being around the original documents from the 1880s. It was almost to the point where I was like on the floor, so excited. And at some points, just practically in tears because they were so emotional and passionate that I think they were like painfully beautiful. So I really, really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. Now, for those who haven't heard of it, it is true story, the book.
Yeah, so this is a true story of Teddy Roosevelt's first love. We're talking a young Teddy Roosevelt at 19 and 20 years old when he was a student at Harvard. And the story of Alice has been told in very small ways over the course of time by biographers and historians. So this will be the first time she really has a chance to be heard and to share her story. It's historic fiction, so what I did was I used the transcriptions of the historical documents and then weaved a novel and grew the characters from that.
Yeah. Now, how did you come up with, did you like stumble upon these letters and then decide to turn it into your second book? How did that happen?
Pretty much, yes. That's exactly right. So I had thought that there might be more to the story of Teddy and Alice because I looked at Teddy Roosevelt's journal entries. And when I looked at those journal entries, he mentioned Alice's name over and over and over, like over 100 times. But biographers had always said that the love letters had been destroyed, albeit a few. But I thought to myself, if a man writes a woman's name over 100 times in his diary, I wonder if he would treasure those love letters and keep them safe. And in the end, I was so fortunate that my hunch proved true. And there they were, the love letters. They were stored at Harvard University.
Wow. Well, what inspired you when you read them to turn it into the premise? Was it just like the sheer passion in them?
Absolutely. You make a really good point. I mean, I was caught up in it for sure. But truthfully, Alice has been dismissed and really disparaged in history. And she was called things like uncomplicated and bland and incapable of spiritual growth. And I thought to myself, what I'm seeing here, this woman who has so much to say and so much life and so much energy in her, she's so much more than that. I mean, it got to the point where things were being said about her and written about her that I nearly couldn't believe and irked me so. At one point, one biographer said, if she had stayed in Teddy Roosevelt's life, he would have, and this is a quote, committed suicide from sheer boredom. And I thought, well, why would anybody say such a thing about this woman that I find so inspirational? You know, at the time, we're talking 1880, and she was doing things differently than other women were doing. She was athletic. She went to his boxing matches and she actually crashed the gender barrier of an all male social club by deciding to go in there and sit with Teddy for a meal. So it was quite exciting to be able to explore her and develop her character.
Yeah. Now, how much research did you do for the novel? A year's worth or?
Yeah, they say, don't go down the rabbit hole for too long, but I was in it. I was like living in it. I was like really enjoying that world. And most of what I have is based on documents and writings and Theodore Roosevelt's words and his books and anything he had, whether it be letters, journal entries, any piece of history. I was just so excited to find and really explored that at length before I even started writing the novel.
Yeah. Now, what was the most difficult part of crafting If a Poem Could Live and Breathe?
Really for me, just being emotional about it. Fate did her wrong. And so I was, you know, really upset actually as I was writing some parts of the novel. And so I almost had to get over that part of it to be able to continue writing. And so I think I would say that that was really difficult to be able to keep on writing, even though I was feeling so strongly. About her and what happened to her and what was said about her. So I was really caught up in that quite a bit. And as you're a writer, so sometimes you're writing things that are so happy and joyful, and then other things that are just so sad. And so it's sort of a bit of an emotional roller coaster when you're writing a novel of this kind.
Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite chapter or part of the story you're excited for readers to read?
So in this book, we go through two sets of time. And at one point, we visit Theodore Roosevelt in North Dakota, years after he first meets Alice Lee. And I am really curious as to whether readers will enjoy that part of the novel, because I really take you through Teddy Roosevelt spent quite a number of years really kind of overcoming what he was dealing with emotionally in North Dakota. And I really worked very hard at developing those chapters. And we visit him in North Dakota 5 times throughout the novel. And I really enjoyed working on that part of it, because it was really showing such growth in a young Teddy Roosevelt, to where I believe it had such an impact on him and really made him such a tremendous leader.
Yeah. Now, how did writing differ from this book compared to Dear George, Dear Mary, your first book?
Sure. So with Dear George, Dear Mary, I had discovered a story from the 1700s about George Washington and his first love, who was not Martha Washington, but actually a woman named Mary. And Mary was the richest heiress in the colonies at the time. And she actually had a house in my hometown. And CarlyRae was really quite incredible, because I would pass this little beautiful historic home in my hometown, and I sort of knew little snippets of information about her. But I decided one day to start looking a little further into it. I had known, I had visited the beautiful home as a young girl, and I had remembered the tour guide saying that George Washington once courted the woman who lived here. And I thought, really? Well, is that local lore, an urban legend, or is it actually real? And I was quite shocked to find this story that I was expecting a date, or a walk in the park. And instead it was love, deception, vengeance, the American Revolution. What is going on? So when I was working on that, I went back to also letters. I was reading poetry written by George Washington in his 20s and teens. And so honestly, transcribing that information was actually a lot more difficult. The writing at the time was very different than we speak now. But I really loved that journey too, because it really took me through even battle scenes and what have you. And then being able to tell the story of this woman who was actually named a traitor in the American Revolution. And as I was researching it, I was like, well, what did you do wrong, Mary? And in the end, she did nothing wrong. I believe she was wrongfully named a traitor, and everything she had was taken from her.
Yeah. Now, you're not just a writer, you're also a 12-time New York Emmy winning writing journalist. So how does that differ, writing a book, differ from journalism? Was that a big jump?
It is quite different, and something I would have never expected to do. But I think there is one thing that's the same. When you're a journalist, you really hope to find a never before told story. It's called the exclusive. And so we're all hoping for the exclusive. And in this case, it was an exclusive the first time from the 1700s, and then the next time from the 1800s, because the love letters that I had transcribed, most of them have never been published, which was quite surprising to me. So this is the first time they'll actually be in print and allow people to read them. So I had to go back to the originals and transcribe them, because most of them are not digitized, and certainly not easy to read unless you're actually there at the library yourself. There's also one other piece of it that I was fascinated by, is that historians and scholars have often cited a couple of lines from what they considered a senior thesis that Theodore Roosevelt wrote at Harvard when he graduated in 1880. But when I went looking for this thesis, because there were just a couple of lines and I really wanted to see the whole thing, what did he have to say? And it was actually an 8-page document. But what I learned was that it was not a thesis. It was actually a speech that Theodore Roosevelt gave on equal rights for women. He went so far as to say that women should be able to keep their name upon marriage. He talked about equal rights to property for a son and a daughter. He talked about equal rights for women in marriage. And it was quite forward thinking at the time. And so I was really thrilled to be able to transcribe that. And it's in the book as well. So it'll be the first time many people will have a chance to read that. It would be his first public address.
Yes. Wow, that's really awesome. Now, walk us through a day in your life when writing. Do you wake up at a certain time, have to write at a certain time?
Well, for me, especially because I'm running around with my job during the day, I really have to immerse myself in that time period. So I like to take a couple of hours in the afternoon when I'm home. Alone, and I play classical music, and I have a special teacup actually that I used from the 1800s that sort of allows me to get in that mode and a kind of escape to that time, because we're talking just a very different time during that period, whether it be from the culture or even like the cuisine. I even made some recipes from the 1800s. Hot cross buns were very popular, so I tried my hand at that, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I like to take a couple of hours to be able to write, and if I could do that every day, that would be the ideal for me. But I really, whatever free time I have, sometimes it would be, if I didn't have the 2 hours, I really tried to take even 10 minutes, a day just to work on the manuscript, because I felt if I got away from it for a day or so, I wouldn't be able to get back. So, and I really find it an escape. I'm not sure about you when you're writing.
Yeah, definitely. Now, are you working on any other exclusive stories right now? Will readers be able to find something else from you, like another love story, or have you uncovered it yet?
Well, I am working on something else and I'm super excited about it, but it's really not ready at this point to talk about. But research I find just really quite riveting and interesting.
Yeah.
So I love hearing stories about women that maybe really deserve a voice. And so if I could give that to them, I'm really thrilled and I feel honored, truthfully. So it involves another president, and I'm doing the research right now to determine whether it's ready. So I will let you know, though, as soon as I have it down on paper.
All right. And now, is there anything else you want to add before we let you go? Where can
Yes,
like viewers
there
get
is
on-
one thing, Carly, this is a big thing for me, is that when I was reading these love letters, you know what I thought to myself? We're never going to have these stories 100 years from now. So people need to start picking up a pen and picking up a piece of paper and writing to people that they adore. It might not have to be a boyfriend, but it could be like somebody that you really care about. And just that beautiful feeling. Oh, wait, I have so here are this is one of the letters. It's an exact replica. And so for me, this was Alice to Teddy. In fact, here she calls him Teddykins in the letter. And so I really had such a joy in being able to see their writing and really get a sense of what it would be like to receive a letter. I even have one here. This is an exact replica of a Teddy Roosevelt letter to Alice. I mean, he says, "Goodbye, my own heart's darling," in it. He says, "My dearest love." He goes on and on. This one I think you might like too. He writes here, "I worship you so that it seems almost desecration to touch you. And yet when I am with you, I can hardly let you a moment out of my arms, my purest queen." I mean, he's such a romantic. And it just made me think, like the texts and emojis are just not going to make a riveting love story. So I hope that maybe people think of writing again and starting that beautiful art.
Yeah. Well, you heard Mary. Go check her out now. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Book Hour. Tune in next week for an all new episode. In the meantime, you can stay up to date on all things Hey, It's Carly Rae on www.heyitscarlyrae.com and on social media.